"I have a ticket, ma'am." For words. But they weren't enough to protect a young black teen from humiliation at 30,000 feet. Jamal Carter was only 16 years old. But that day, he carried himself like a young man who had earned his seat in the world that it was his first time flying first class. His mother, a single parent and night shift nurse, had saved for 6 months to reward Jamal's achievement, winning the state mathematics Olympiad. The reward? A flight to Los Angeles to visit his dream college, UCLA. Wearing a navy blue button-up shirt and clean slacks, Jamal clutched his book and ticket tightly as he boarded Flight 782. He looked for Seat 2A, his seat, and sat down quietly, placing his backpack under the seat and opening his copy of The Alchemist. Other passengers barely noticed him. Until she did. Karen. Blonde, late 30s, crisp uniform, red lipstick. A senior flight attendant who had worked with the airline for over a decade. She approached Jamal, narrowed her eyes, and without greeting, asked flatly, "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" Jamal looked up, startled but polite. "Yes, ma'am. This is 2A. I have my ticket right here." Karen glanced at the boy, her eyes scanning his skin, his age, his backpack. Then, with a sharp tone, she replied, "First class is for premium customers, not coach." Jamal's hands trembled slightly as he held out the boarding pass. "My mom, she bought this seat for me. It's real." Karen didn't even glance at the ticket. Instead, she turned to the intercom clipped to her collar. "Security check needed at row 2. Possible seat misuse." Scene froze. Passengers nearby turned their heads. A man in 2B, middle-aged, in a business suit, looked visibly uncomfortable. "He showed you the ticket," he said under his breath to Karen. "You didn't even look." Karen shot him a glance, then addressed Jamal again. "Sir, you'll need to move back to economy until this is sorted out." Jamal opened his mouth to speak, but the weight of the moment, the stares, the disbelief, crushed his voice. A flight attendant had authority. He had feared out a few rows back. A young woman quietly raised her phone and pressed record. Minutes later, a second attendant arrived. Jamal was escorted, gently but firmly, to a seat at the back of the plane. That he didn't argue. He didn't cry. He just sat, defeated, still clutching his unopened book. The plane took off to No one knew that in just 12 hours, this quiet injustice would explode across the internet. And that by the next morning, the airline would suffer one of the biggest public relations disasters in its history. The cabin had fallen awkwardly silent. Jamal stood, book still in his hands, as the second flight attendant gestured toward the back of the plane. No official had checked his ticket. No apology had been offered. The assumption, loud, clear, and undeniable, was that a black teen didn't belong in first class. His legs felt like concrete. The walk down that narrow aisle stretched miles in his mind. Passengers on both sides glanced up, some out of curiosity, others with sympathy, and a few with indifference. The man from seat 2B stood halfway up as if to speak again, but the sharp shake of Karen's head kept him silent. Behind Jamal, the phone was still recording that he reached seat 28F, near the back. It smelled of disinfectant and old coffee. He sat down, eyes locked on the seat in front of him. He wasn't crying, but inside, he was drowning. A woman beside him, elderly and kind-faced, leaned over. "Sweetheart, you don't deserve this," she whispered. "I saw everything." He nodded slightly. His voice had gone. For the rest of the flight, Jamal didn't open his book. He didn't eat the small snack they served. He didn't even look up. He just stared into the void of the seat in front of him, wondering what he had done wrong. Was it his clothes? His skin? His age? The injustice weighed heavier than gravity. But while Jamal sat in silence, the internet began to roar. The woman who had recorded the incident, a college student named Alina, had already posted the clip with the caption, "Young black teen wrongly kicked from first class. No one even checked his ticket. Shame on at Sky American Air." Within the first hour, the video had over 60,000 views. By the time the flight landed, it was in the millions. The hashtags started to spread. Hashtag Justice for Jamal, hashtag Flying While Black, hashtag Boycott Sky America. Major influencers, civil rights advocates, and celebrities began sharing the post. Screenshots of Jamal's calm demeanor contrasted with Karen's accusatory stance became a symbol of everything wrong with systemic bias in service industries. The airline didn't respond, yet. But the pressure was mounting. Fast, and Jamal? He still didn't know what was happening. He was just a boy trying to visit a college, unaware that his name was about to shake the airline industry. The video was just 43 seconds long. A shaky phone recording, captured in the soft light of an airplane cabin, showing a teenage boy standing silently as he was asked, no, ordered, to move to the back of the plane. No shouting, no resistance, just quiet humiliation recorded and broadcast to the world. Alina Moore, the 22-year-old college student who recorded it, had hesitated before posting it. She knew how things could spiral online, but she also knew what she'd seen was wrong. Her caption was simple: young black teen kicked out of first class. No one even checked his ticket. This is 2025. Do better. At Sky American Air. She pressed post. Within 20 minutes, her notifications exploded. Comments flooded in. What kind of training do they give these flight attendants? I don't care if it was a mistake. The damage is done. He's a child. What if that were your son? By the first hour, the video had crossed 500,000 views. By the third hour, it hit 2.7 million. By morning, it passed 10 million and began trending globally. Hashtags took over every platform. Hashtag Justice for Jamal, hashtag Flying While Black, hashtag Sky American Boycott, hashtag Karen in the Sky. News outlets picked it up before Sky American had issued a single word of response. CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and local stations all ran headlines. Teen removed from first class without cause. Airline silent. Social media outrage builds against Sky American. Black teen humiliated in viral flight video. Calls for justice grow. It wasn't just the public. The powerful noticed too. Civil rights leaders and social justice groups immediately stepped in. The NAACP tweeted their support. Prominent attorneys offered free representation to Jamal's family. Celebrities like Ava DuVernay, LeBron James, and Zendaya reposted the video to their millions of followers. One influencer captioned her post, "Being black in first class shouldn't be a protest." Another posted, "If he was white, would they have asked him to move?" And perhaps the most thunderous voice came from tech giant Marcus Hill. Marcus Hill wasn't known for public statements. As the CEO of Hill Tech, a multi-billion-dollar software empire, he was a quiet titan. But that day, his silence shattered. He tweeted, "That boy is my nephew. I paid for his first-class ticket. Your airline treated him like a stowaway." Effective immediately, Hill Tech is terminating its corporate travel contract with Sky American. "We won't support racism. Ever." Attached was a formal letter, signed, sealed, and very public, canceling Hill Tech's $400 million per year travel contract. The effect was nuclear. Sky American stock opened the next hour 8% down. News of Hill Tech's departure rippled through the financial press. Other corporations began quietly reviewing their travel partners. Market analysts predicted an overnight loss of nearly $8 billion in valuation. Back in Jamal's world, the whirlwind hadn't stopped. He and his mother, Teresa, were in a small Los Angeles hotel room. They had landed the night before, unaware of the storm brewing online. Jamal hadn't even checked his phone until a bellhop recognized him from the video. "Is that you, kid? You're all over TikTok." Jamal blinked. "What?" When he finally opened his feed, his face stared back at him from every direction. His heart pounded, not from excitement, but confusion, maybe fear. He was trending, but not for a reason he had chosen. His mother sat beside him, eyes wide, scrolling the hundreds of messages pouring in. There were offers from lawyers, messages of support, interview requests, scholarships. She wiped her eyes with a hotel napkin. "Baby, I just wanted to give you something good. I didn't want this kind of attention." Jamal shook his head. "You gave me what matters." "I'm okay, Mom." But they're not. Outside their small room, the world debated racism, power, and corporate responsibility. Journalists dug into airline complaint records. Former employees of Sky American shared stories of bias and neglect. One even posted anonymously, "Karen's been like this for years. No one ever stopped her." As public fury mounted, calls for Karen's firing intensified. A Change.org petition demanding her termination reached 250,000 signatures in 12 hours. Pressure built on the airline CEO to make a public statement. But still, radio silence. The longer they waited, the worse it got. Meanwhile, Jamal remained silent. He wasn't sure what to say. He didn't want fame. He wanted fairness. And soon, the weight of that silence The silence of a 16-year-old who had been wronged became louder than any press release the airline could have issued. Sky American's corporate headquarters in Dallas woke up to a nightmare. The social media backlash was no longer just a PR crisis. It had become a full-blown corporate emergency. Stock analysts were panicking, shareholders demanded explanations, and by 9:45 a.m., the airline's market value had dropped $7.80 billion. The tweet from Marcus Hill was everywhere, retweeted by CEOs, lawyers, political figures, and celebrities. But the one that did the most damage wasn't from a stranger. It came from Hill Tech's official corporate account. Just 3 words long. Contract. Terminated. Immediately. Attached was a scanned PDF. Hill Tech's official notice of contract termination citing racial discrimination and public misconduct. It listed the exact flight, time, and violation, leaving no room for interpretation. It was brutal, surgical, and devastating. Meanwhile, Jamal and his mother were trying to keep up in their hotel suite. Reporters crowded the lobby. Calls came in from CNN, NBC, The Guardian. Jamal's school principal sent a heartfelt email, while his classmates organized a digital campaign of support with the tagline, "Jamal belongs in first class." Still, Jamal stayed mostly quiet that he and his mother watched Marcus Hill speak live on national TV. Standing behind a podium with the Hill Tech logo, he addressed the world. This isn't just about one flight or one boy. It's about a system that sees Black youth as threats, even when they're peaceful, successful, and paying customers. That was my nephew. He did everything right. He earned that seat. And your airline told him, without saying the words, that he didn't belong. The crowd watching clapped. The internet surged with comments. This is how you use power. Finally, a CEO speaking up. Imagine if more leaders did this. The pressure was unrelenting. Sky American had no choice. That afternoon, the airline released a corporate statement. Finally, we are deeply sorry for the unacceptable incident that occurred on Flight 782, that we are launching an immediate investigation and placing the flight attendant in question on administrative leave. We have personally reached out to the Carter family to apologize and will implement anti-bias training across our workforce effective immediately. Too little, too late. Critics noted the statement didn't mention Jamal by name, nor accept responsibility for specific actions. Karen, the flight attendant, was placed on indefinite leave, pending investigation. But leaked internal emails from employees revealed she had multiple past complaints for inappropriate behavior and bias. No action had ever been taken. Until now, the world had moved. Jamal's silence had spoken volumes. His uncle's action had shaken an industry. Back at the hotel, Jamal's mother hugged him tightly. "You okay, baby?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah, I think I am now." She smiled. "You didn't deserve any of it." "I know," he replied. "But maybe now they know too." In the coming days, other companies followed Hill Tech's lead. 2 major banks publicly paused their contracts with Sky American. Shareholders began demanding a board-level audit of the airline's diversity practices. Internal memos leaked, showing panic at the highest levels. Meanwhile, Sky American CEO was summoned before a congressional subcommittee on racial equity in transportation. All because of one moment, one boy, one walk of shame that shouldn't have happened, and one family who refused to stay quiet. The interview studio was quiet. Jamal sat on a Navy chair under the lights, opposite a national morning show host. Cameras pointed at him, wires and teleprompters buzzing softly. On the screen behind him was a simple phrase, #Justice for Jamal. He looked calm, still wearing the same Navy shirt he had worn on the flight. His mother sat just off camera, her hands tightly clasped together, holding back tears. The host leaned forward gently. "Jamal, if you could say one thing to that flight attendant, what would it be?" He paused, took a breath, then said quietly, but clearly, "I don't want anyone else kicked out of their seat just for being Black." The audience, watching from homes across the country, felt the weight of that sentence. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. And it was enough that Jamal's story had already inspired millions. People across the globe saw him not as a victim, but as a symbol. Schools taught the incident in civics classes. Activists pointed to his story as proof that accountability can start with one voice. A voice that, ironically, had never yelled out a week after the interview. The Carter Scholarship Fund was announced, backed by Hill Tech, supported by dozens of donors. Its mission: to send underprivileged students of color to visit their dream colleges, first class. Within 24 hours, it raised over $2 million. Meanwhile, the ripple effects at Sky American hadn't stopped. The airline's board of directors announced a sweeping internal audit. Their CEO released a second apology, this time using Jamal's name. Karen, the flight attendant, formally resigned after an internal panel found multiple violations of conduct expectations. In response to public pressure, the airline committed to the following: mandatory racial bias training for all flight staff, a new independent passenger advocacy board, a Jamal clause in training manuals, highlighting the case as what must never happen again. But for Jamal, it wasn't about policy. It was about principle. He had gone to bed a high school mathlete and woken up a symbol. He hadn't asked for it, but he carried it with grace. Every interview, every camera, every microphone, he used them all to say one thing: it's not just about me. This happens to kids who don't have famous uncles. We've got to change it for them too. At school, things were different. When Jamal returned, he was greeted with a hallway of applause. His teachers hugged him. His classmates chanted his name. Even the janitor, Mr. Thompson, who rarely spoke, patted him on the back and whispered, "Proud of you, kid." But Jamal didn't let it go to his head. That afternoon, he returned to his math club. He solved a practice problem. He laughed with his friends. He was just a boy again. Almost. And yet, everything had changed. News outlets called him the calm revolutionary. Talk shows asked, "What if this had happened to your child?" Politicians debated new airline regulations, citing the Jamal case. But he just kept saying the same thing, over and over: "I just want fairness." That's all. The world had watched a teen be humiliated. Then they watched him rise, not by shouting, but by standing still. And when his family, his community, and finally the world stood with him, they sent a message louder than rage: dignity matters. And injustice, even in aisle 2A, must be answered.